One of the hardest things fantasy adaptations have to pull off isn't the action or even the characters, it's the world. Because in a book, you can spend chapters slowly teaching the reader how everything works, but on screen, you've got minutes before people decide if they're in or out, even more so on streaming. And most movies solve that problem the lazy way. Someone starts talking. A lot. About everything. The problem is, exposition like that doesn't feel like a world being discovered. It feels like homework. And that's why the opening of How to Train Your Dragon is so interesting, because it does the exact opposite of what safe fantasy storytelling usually does. In under 8 minutes, it builds an entire living world, introduces the main characters, establishes the central conflict, and quietly plants the emotional core of the story without ever stopping to explain itself. And what's even more surprising is how simple it is when you break it down, because this opening isn't impressive because it's complicated. It's impressive because it shouldn't work this well, and yet it does. The opening to this movie does 3 things really well: world building, character introductions, and foreshadowing. Shockingly, it manages to show most of this rather than tell it. Yes, the movie does begin with a voiceover.
This is Burke.
This is a dangerous tool to use because it can quickly become exposition dumping, but I think this movie manages to avoid that. I think it uses the tool successfully. One reason is that instead of a generic epic voice giving us the entire history of the world all at once for context, How to Train Your Dragon instead uses its main character. And he doesn't sound like he's reading from a history textbook either. This intro is full of wit and whimsy. It has voice. So while it is technically telling us a lot of what we need to know, it does so in a way that is unique and, frankly, iconic. The intro sets up the world the characters live in through setup and payoff. Hiccup says,
And it's been here for 7 generations, but every single building is new.
This instantly creates intrigue and interest because it doesn't make sense, at least until we see the dragons. Hiccup also says they have a pest problem, which is a humorous way to put what the audience probably guesses to be those dragons. The live-action movie takes this a step further and mentions that the Vikings of Burke have decided to take the fight to the dragons, which sets up one of the changes made for that movie from the animated one. But not only does it build the world that the story takes place in, it also fills in that world by introducing both the main and side characters and the villains, if you want to call them that. First, of course, we meet Hiccup. He doesn't tell us much about himself at first, but we are shown a lot more about him. Again, great writing. All the other Vikings ask him why he's out. Shouldn't he be inside? We obviously don't know why that's the case, but we figure it out pretty soon when Gobber is introduced, as he lays it out clearly. Hiccup is a disappointment.
Yes, that's it. Stop being all of you.
We get, of course, the legendary line, "You just gestured to all of me," and this is just one of the brilliant writing tricks that this movie uses that are set up in the opening of the movie. I call it top and tail writing, or bookends. This line is used again, but has an entirely different meaning by the end of the movie, showing exactly how dialogue should be used in storytelling. It shows not just Hiccup's growth, but also Stoick's growth. Stoick is, of course, another character who's introduced at the beginning. Hiccup says that he is the best dragon fighter of all time, telling that lovely story about Stoick popping a dragon's head off its shoulders when he was a child, but these are not just words for very long. We see Stoick literally strangle a natter, and then, of course, punch a monstrous nightmare in the face. Stoick's introduction can't be understood as good as it is without also thinking about Hiccup's introduction for the dragons. He goes through each of them, saying how much fame and renown he would get from killing them. Right when he mentions that only the bravest Vikings take on a monstrous nightmare, we see Stoick go face to face with one. Again, this opening uses both showing and telling masterfully. They work in tandem rather than one replacing the other. This dragon setup also gives us the stakes of the story. Burke is in a battle, a constant battle for their very survival. This is no small stakes adventure, it is a fight for their actual lives, and we see how seriously the characters take it. We meet a few more characters I haven't mentioned yet following this. Of course, the introduction that gets the most time and has the most importance is Astrid's. She is obviously the most important to the plot, and thus the script focuses on her a little longer. She is given the classic love interest introduction, complete with massive explosions behind her. We also meet the twins, Fishlegs, and Snotlout. Now, Snotlout is actually given a little more time in the remake because he is given his own mini-arc in that movie, which I absolutely love. In the original, he, along with the twins and Fishlegs, is pretty much just comic relief and that's it. But the remake does give him a little story with his father that mirrors Hiccup's in a beautiful way. Subscribe to watch my future video on that because that will be coming out. Because of this, we get to see that story set up when Snotlout's dad acts embarrassed about him. This is, of course, immediately following the scene where Stoick is embarrassed by Hiccup. So let's get into how those two are set up, because while the dragons provide the physical conflict in this movie, the emotional conflict revolves entirely around fathers and sons, specifically Stoick and Hiccup. Hiccup is not like his father. Like I said, he's a disappointment. And the first 7 minutes of the movie tell us this. It's not until the end of the opening that we actually get to see it. After Hiccup finally takes down a dragon, he is chased by the only one that saw it, another dragon. His father has to come rescue him, but not before the dragon causes a ton of damage to Burke, and in the live action, causes a natter to escape with the sheep. All of this just goes to prove that Hiccup is what his father says he is, a disappointment, that he needs to change, quote, all of this. But this intro scene doesn't just show Hiccup's character flaws, it also gives us Stoick's. Throughout the whole scene, he refuses to listen to Hiccup. At least 3 times in these 8 minutes, Hiccup tries to tell his dad something, but he just won't listen. So we see both Hiccup and Stoick's character flaws, but we're also given their positive attributes. Stoick cares deeply for his son and his village as the chieftain, and of course, there's the obvious positive about him being a great dragon fighter. As for Hiccup, we see his ingenuity. We see his desire to make his father proud. In every aspect, this opening is perfect for those characters. And I would be remiss not to mention John Powell's beautiful score. The original movie's soundtrack was near perfect, just like the rest of the opening. In fact, in an interview, Powell actually said that working on the score for the remake was the hardest thing he has ever composed. He has to do 2 more of them. I mean, imagine having to make your greatest achievement again. In truth, this whole team literally only came back because they knew the movies were going to be remade with or without them, and they wanted to make sure Universal didn't desecrate their story. Dean DeBlois, the director, literally said that in an interview. I would say that they succeeded, as my hot take is actually that the remake is better than the original. Don't tell anyone I said that. So, to conclude, the opening of How to Train Your Dragon is perfect in almost every way. It builds the world by showing rather than telling. It introduces the main characters and their virtues and vices, and it sets up the stakes of the story. It even manages to slide in some lines of dialogue that will be used to bookend the movie as a whole. Are there any movies that y'all think come even close to matching this level of writing in the introduction? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, could you hit the like button? It really helps more people see the video. And if you want to see more videos like this one, I will be making a series on How to Train Your Dragon, specifically the first movie, for the next few weeks. So hit subscribe if you want to see that. With all that said, I'll see y'all in the next one. Farewell, friends. And use the link in the description for $20 in free Bitcoin when you buy your first crypto using Coinbase. Support the channel.